I'm out in my front yard again. I rarely come out here. I planted things here a year ago, and I rarely even come out here. It's just everything's on automatic pilot. I pass through, go into my car, opening the front door. But as I said, everything's on automatic pilot. And when I moved here, about the only plant here was this rue, this herb, this rue. It's back there in the back. It's that yellow plant in the back. It's a plant from the Bible lands. The people who lived here before were moved here from the Bible lands, and I think they probably planted it here because they needed it for their cooking. And I don't know much about rue because I didn't know much about rue, but I actually thought it was a pretty tacky plant at first. It didn't have all these fairy roses growing around it then, and it just kind of stuck up there in a naked fashion. And but before I pulled it up, I looked it up to see. First, I looked it up on my plant identifier. Picture this, I think, is my plant identifier, which I'm very pleased with. And it said it was rue. I researched rue. I research everything. I constantly research. And then I discovered what it was, where it had come from, the purpose, what you do with rue. Like I said, a little bit over a year when I moved here, this was the only plant plus a few twigs. I'm talking about a few sprigs of this peppermint. Well, I've been noticing this peppermint, and I don't really know that I knew that peppermint bloomed. Like I said, it was so spindly and scraggly when I moved here. I really didn't pay much attention to it. I love mint, and everybody says, be careful. Plant it somewhere that you have to contain it. Well, hey, I like it here. When I walk out, I get this deep fragrance of mint, and I love to smell mint. It's a clean smell. I researched mint. Mint is good for you. It has lots of health benefits. Good for your stomach. Good for your digestive system. I think they even have used mint in ancient times for skin disorders, all kinds of disorders. But what I'm really going to talk to you about is the fact that these plants were here, and I just left them here. I've written a blog post about this, as I always do. In July, I showed the picture of the rue. September 19th, it was covered with caterpillars. And soon after that, they had become swallowtail butterflies. So immediately I was convinced that that was a worthwhile plant. I tried to move it to my backyard, but I couldn't get it to move. It didn't want to move. It liked where it was. So today, the title of this whole discussion is Bloom Where You Need to Be. Not bloom where you're planted. That assumes that somebody else has made a decision for you and you're just to adjust and make the best of it. I don't think that's really the way it should be. I think people need to be where they need to be so that they will do well. Apparently my rue didn't want to be in the backyard. It wanted to be in the front yard. That's where it needed to be. Tomorrow I have a fragrance project bed going on in my backyard, and tomorrow I'm going to try to move some of this mint, which I think will move very easily. I think, like they say, it'll take over. But I want it to take over. I have a fragrance garden back there. I can't think of anything more lovely than mint growing all around, like a ground cover all around that fragrance garden, so that when you step in it, the menthol rises up and flashes through the air. So I want that there, and I think I won't have. I'm going to also try to make some cuttings and transplant some of this fairy rose, which has a slight fragrance. It's really growing as high as I've ever. It's flourishing in this yard. But what I want to tell you is that when I started gardening this spring, I had decided that I was going to grow lavender. Lavender, a delicacy. Well, lavender hates Mississippi. It hated my garden. It did not want to be in my garden. And every lavender plant I planted died. Well, I looked closely at this today. Isn't this kind of beautiful? Kind of like lavender? Who's to say that I haven't really missed the point? I should have planted peppermint where I tried to make the lavender grow. The lavender did not need to be where I planted it. It needed to be somewhere else. This peppermint will do very well in my yard, and that's what I need to plant. Plant things where they need to be so that they will bloom. That goes for people too. In fact, there's a Dolly Parton saying, if you don't like the road you're walking on, get dust off your boots and go somewhere else, something like that. But if you're not happy where you are and you can't find a way to adjust to that, go somewhere else. You're not stuck. You don't have to bloom where you're planted. You need to go where you can bloom.